Alright, so to start this series off, we see the main character, Ragnas, who is welcoming Lady Felicia back home. However, as she is walking past Rangas, she fires off some sort of fire attack right in his face, which makes him fall to the ground. She then tells her butler, Belbedo, to not let that filth get close to her. Belbedo apologizes and says that the slave just keeps insisting on coming to greet her. Felicia then says that her mood is ruined now and that she is going back to her room. Belbedo says that he understands, and he then looks over to Ragnas before he punches him in his face. Belbedo walks away while telling Ragnas to go back and reflect on his actions and calls him a useless guy. Ragnas bows and apologizes. He then goes to a horse stable and lies on a bunch of hay while thinking that 2 years ago he was called the Child of God and treated as the greatest prodigy of the kingdom from the start. We then get into a flashback where we are explained that there is something called level in this world, the special skill that awakens when one turns 10 years of age. Ragnas was in the kingdom's church for that very ritual. We then see a couple of people talking, saying that the Child of God Ragnas is here, and they wonder what kind of skill he will obtain. We then see Felicia by his side, who starts to laugh. She looks at Ragnas and says that it's rare to see him nervous. She tells him that he is already level 52 and that the average level of knights is around 40, so it's to be expected. Ragnas says that it's not really like that, but Felicia tells him that he isn't the only one who is nervous, as she admits that she is also nervous. She then wonders what type of skill she will receive, thinking that it would be nice if she received a skill that makes her magic stronger. Ragnas then says that Felicia aspires to become a royal court magician. However, he admits that he still hasn't decided on anything, and Felicia just playfully mocks him. We then see that the ceremony went smoothly, and that Felicia got the power magic boost, which was the same that the great sage had. Ragnas tells her that it's really amazing that she got that skill, and asks if she isn't happy, and she says that she is, and that with this new skill, she has finally caught up to Ragnas. After that, Ragnas's turn came, and the surrounding area was in an uproar because of the rainbow crystal. The priest asks Ragnas what type of skill he received, but Ragnas says that he got the skill level reset and that his level will reset to level 1, and that his abilities will also reset every day. Ragnas is in shock, and even Felicia can't believe it. Ragnas explains that even the scholars of the kingdom looked into the details, but couldn't find any use for it, and after that, his life took a turn right away. We then see his dad, who is super upset and screams at him for getting such a trash spell. Ragnas tells him to please wait, and that it isn't his own fault. His father then screams even louder and tells him not to dare talk back and for Ragnas to know his place. But that's far from everything, as because of his level reset, Ragnas's engagement with Felicia has been called off. Ragnas can't believe it. However, his father explains that he and Notos have been best friends since long ago, and that there's no way that he would let her best friend's daughter marry a failure like Ragnas. He then says that he proposed an engagement with Georg, and he accepted happily, which Felicia also did. Georg then tells Felicia that she should say something to him. Felicia goes forward and uses healing magic on Ragnas. Ragnas smiles and thanks her for healing his wounds. However, Felicia tells him not to get the wrong idea, and that he just looked so pathetic that she at least made him able to move. She then tells him that she came to say goodbye and that Ragnas is just a nuisance right now. Ragnas tells her that he really liked her, not only because of the engagement, but because it was genuine. Felicia doesn't care though, and just tells him to forget about her, and she then leaves, saying goodbye. Ragnas is still on the ground and thinks that he has no one by his side anymore. After that, Georg goes forward and pulls his hair while asking what the matter is, and asks if he is so shocked that he can't even make a sound. Their father tells Georg that Ragnas doesn't hold any value anymore, and that since the second house still has Georg, there's no issue, telling them all that from now on, they should treat him like a slave, giving him minimal food and sleep in the horse shed, and notify everyone in the mansion about this. We then see that 2 years have passed since that day. Ragnas is in the shed and wonders if he will be like this forever. He says that Lucy is the only one who is kind to him in the mansion, and Lucy is then the horse, I would assume. Anyway, suddenly Ragnas hears a voice talking about the true meaning of this skill. Ragnas turns to Lucy and asks what that voice is, but she can't talk after all, as she is a horse. Ragnas then thinks about it again and looks to see if something has changed. However, he's still at level 1, his stats are also the same, and nothing has changed. But suddenly he realizes something, which is that his skill points are the only ones that are high. He thinks that he thought that there was nothing but demerits when returning to level 1, and thinks that just maybe it has all been a misunderstanding, saying that normally you gain 1 skill point for every level you gain, and with 822 skill points, In exchange for his skill being reset to level 1, he gets 1 skill point every day. Moreover, the skill points he earns while leveling up in a day will not get reset, thinking that if he can make use of his skill points efficiently, then if he is correct, he can become stronger than before. He starts to smile and says that he had given up, but that he finally found the true potential of this skill, and that luck is now on his side. He pats Lucy on the head and says that he will leave this place now. Ragnas tells her that she was the only one who was kind to him, and that someday, when he has proven his strength, he will come back only to take her with him, telling her that it's unfortunate, but that this is goodbye, and Lucy even starts to cry. Ragnas then starts looking super cold, as he thinks that he will teach those who abandoned him a lesson, and that with this power, he will once again rise as the child of God. We then once again skip forward to 5 years later, and away from his home in a town on the west side of the kingdom of Aswalef. We then see Ragnas asking someone if he is the informant Cliff, and Cliff calls it a sudden greeting. Ragnas tells him that he wants info on the skill crystal, and how much he has to pay for it. Cliff is a bit caught off guard, but says maybe 50,000 coins. Ragnas casually drops that in front of him, and tells him to tell Ragnas everything that he knows, and Cliff is in awe as he calls Ragnas super generous, and says that he will tell him everything. Cliff tells him to take a seat, and he says that he will start with the basics. He says that, first of all, it is used to awaken a skill in a child of 10 years old. That's what is commonly said. However, actually, there's another feature of adding skills, but it requires 100 skill points, so it's pretty rare. Ragnas thinks back and remembers that in his childhood, his father told him the same thing when he had high expectations for him. Ragnas then tells Cliff that he already knows that. Cliff is a bit shocked and says that he's surprisingly knowledgeable. He then says that the information that he is seeking is really rare and only possessed by the royal family and priests. After that, we see Ragnas leaving and hearing a bunch of people talking about the kingdom of Lisbeth being destroyed by the royal family of the kingdom of Yuresh. We then get to Ragnas, who has gone to a forest, and he says that he crossed the border, but that this country won't let him use its skill crystal since he is an outsider. Then he thought that he had to gain some fame and joined a guild, but even when he gave it his all, it took a lot of time just to even raise his abilities from G to F. He then thinks that now the skill crystal that he has longed for is right in his sights, and says that he doesn't want to let this chance escape, so he goes into the forest to look for someone from the royal family of the kingdom of Yuresh. He begins to lose hope after looking for hours, but suddenly he hears someone screaming that she is there. Ragnas catches on right away, and he spots the girl who has a skill crystal around her neck. As she is running, however, she falls, but Ragnas eases her fall. The girl is surprised that it doesn't hurt, but suddenly Ragnas takes her hand above her mouth and tells her that if she doesn't want to be found out, then she needs to keep quiet. The guards who are looking for her are confused as she disappeared without a trace, and they then scatter around to try and look for her. Ragnas calms down and takes away his hand, and tells her that, first off, he isn't an enemy. However, she asks him if he really wants her to believe him in a situation like this. Ragnas tells her that if he releases her, then she might just run away again, and tells her that he wants her to bear with him until he is done talking. The girl says that she will listen and tells Ragnas to get away from her, and that it's rude to talk to a girl while pushing her down. The girl then gets up and asks Ragnas what his goal is, and that he doesn't look like the comrade soldier of Lisbeth. The girl says that if he is after money, then she has some on her. But Ragnas says that he isn't after money, but instead, he's after what's around her neck. She tries to say that it's just an accessory, but he calls it a weak lie, and says that it's a skill crystal, and asks her to please let him use it. The girl says that he must know its true powers, and he says that of course he does. The girl then says that it's all the more reason that she can't give it to him. Ragnas tries to reason with her, however, she says that she can't trust him. She says that even if he isn't a soldier, then he might be a bandit or something like that. Ragnas says that he isn't, but the girl tells him to prove it to her. Ragnas then gets on his knees and asks her how he can make her believe him. The girl thinks for a bit before putting out her hand and telling him to become her slave, which just leaves Ragnas in pure awe. The girl asks if Ragnas didn't hear her and repeats herself, but he says that he heard it and that he just thought that it sounded crazy. However, the girl says that she is serious. Ragnas thinks that generally slaves are criminals or their relatives, and that being a slave is proof that you have committed some kind of crime in the past, thinking that back in Zweit he was only treated as a slave and that they didn't make him sign a slave contract, which was why he was able to escape. The girl then says that there is nobody by her side right now, and that if Ragnas becomes her slave, then he wouldn't be able to betray her now. Ragnas says that he gets it, and that she needs someone who won't ever betray her. The girl says that he is correct and that she needs compassion right now. Ragnar says that he can't blame her, but a slave contract is wild. However, on the other side, the merit is that he will be able to use the skill crystal whenever he wants, and also he will be able to find a companion who won't betray him. He thinks that the master can only punish the slaves when they've gone against the will of their master, and in other words, if he doesn't betray her, she won't betray him either. And after thinking, Ragnar says that he is fine with it. The girl is a bit shocked first, but Ragnar then kneels down and tells her to do it. The girl then says that she, Nina Yuresh, commands to enslave this person in her name. After that, some sort of dark magic goes to Ragnar and he screams that it burns. After a while it's done, and he has gotten a black star on his neck. After the girl asks if this really was okay, but Ragnar ensure her and that he chose to do it. Ragnar then says that he did as she asked and asks her to now let him use the skill crystal. The girl then lets him know that even if he has over 100 skill points, he will acquire a random skill, which Ragnar already knows of course, and he then tells her to check his skill points, and she then sees that he has 3,047,000 skill points. Ragnar gets a smug expression, as he says that he can now acquire about 30 skills. Nina says that she can't believe it, and that she hasn't even heard of an ability called Level Reset. However, Ragnar just tells her that he will explain it later. He then uses the crystal, but is confused about what just happened, as his skill points suddenly went to 0, and he wonders just what kind of skill he got with all of his skill points. The skill then pops up, and it's another rainbow-colored skill. The skill is called Unrivaled, and it improves status for a minute. After use, the original status is halved, and it can only be used once a day. Ragnar thinks that the skill itself is good, but that the demerits are too much. Nina is curious and asks him what type of spell he got. He explains, and Nina then tries to check it herself, but she is in shock as she is unable to and wonders what type of spell the master is unable to check on. She then says that she can't check his level reset either. Ragnar thinks that maybe only the person themselves can check the rainbow-colored skills. Ragnar then assures Nina not to worry and that he will explain everything later. Still, Nina is a bit hesitant as his level reset ability sounds a bit too overpowered. Ragnar just smiles and asks her how she feels after making a guy like that her slave. Nina says that she is quite conflicted, explaining that she might not be that reliable as his companion and that Ragnar might be too much for her to handle. Ragnar then just smiles and tells Nina to take care of him, and they then shake hands. Suddenly, there were a ton of knights coming their way and saying that they had found Nina. Ragnar asks what Nina's level is, and she says that she is level 21. Ragnar thinks that he himself is only level 1, and that they can't win if they are up against the Knights Order of Elizabeth. He says, do or die, and thinks that he can only bet on his new skill, so he tells his unrivaled skill to activate. He then sees that all of his stats have gone up to plus 5S, and he is in shock as he says that the highest rank he has ever seen is S. However, he says that he only has a minute, and that it's not the time to be idling around, and that if the time runs out, they won't be able to escape. Nina wonders if all of his stats went up so much thanks to his unrivaled skill before asking Ragnar what they should do. Ragnar excuses himself before he starts to carry Nina. Nina can't believe it, and says that he can't carry a princess at a time like this. Ragnar just thinks that for now he needs to take Nina and make the knights scatter. Just then, the knights find them. Just then, Ragnar tells Nina to hold on tight before he starts sprinting, and thanks to his unrivaled skill, he is quicker than anything ever as he just runs away with no problem at all. Ragnar then says that they have returned to the west side and that they won't be able to reach them now. Ragnar then thinks to himself that it takes an hour to reach the forest from the west side, but it only took him a few seconds, and he is amazed by this new skill of his. After that, we get to the king, who asks someone named Julius if he has found Nina yet. He is angry and asks him why he thinks that the king took so much time to destroy Rojamel, Diane, and Yuresh. Julius just says that he truly apologizes, but tells the king that the troops moved just like he ordered them to. The king only gets more angry by this, as he tells Julius not to give him that crap and to know his place. Julius then once again apologizes for being impolite. The king tells him that this is his last chance and that if he fails this time, then his head will fly. He then starts talking to some sort of chest and says that just in a bit, her daughter will be his and calls the chest Olivia, which leaves me a bit confused, but whatever. Julius then thinks to himself that the king is the one who should know his place and calls him an ugly pig. He then says whatever and thinks if there is someone really obedient and easy to use. He then calls out to Forlock, and Forlock goes forward. Julius tells Forlock to make his squad search for Nina Yuresh and that this is an imperial order, so he needs to see it through. Forlock just says that he gladly accepts it. We then get back to Nina and Ragnar, and we can see Nina, who's just beginning to wake up. The first thing she sees is Ragnar, who says that she is finally awake and calls her a sleepyhead. Nina right away asks Ragnas where they are, and Ragnas explains that this is Yugen's inn, and that for now they don't have to worry about any pursuers. Nina looks relieved. However, her face quickly goes blank, and she realizes that she has no clothes. Ragnas explains that her clothes were dirty after running around in the forest, and says that they were in the way when he was trying to wipe off the dirt from Nina's body, which is why he later asked the landlady to do the laundry. Nina, with a shaky tone, asks Ragnas who took off her clothes, and Ragnas just asks if there is anyone else other than him before saying that he was also the one who wiped off her body. Nina looks completely lost for words. Meanwhile, Ragnas tells her to be grateful to him. However, Nina screams that she can't believe him and calls him a pervert before she starts to run away. They then get downstairs, and Ragnas asks if Nina is still mad, which she clearly is, as she isn't answering. Ragnas just wonders if it isn't obvious to serve the master as a slave. Suddenly, the landlady comes by and tells Nina that he came here carrying her unconscious, and says that she was wondering if anything was wrong, but says that she is glad to see her doing well. Nina asks her if that's really true, and the landlady says that it is, and that she even got curious and watched as he diligently took care of Nina. Nina is shocked by this, but Ragnas says that it's obvious after all. They then get served breakfast, and Nina tells Ragnas that he doesn't need to call her master and could just say Nina, as she wants to be on equal footing with Ragnas. Ragnas says that he will be careful, as he is sticking a whole piece of bread into his mouth. Nina then, with a bit of embarrassment, apologizes for before, and says that it was kind of Ragnas to do all that. Ragnas just tells her not to worry and that he won't do anything like that again before going into it and telling Nina about his unrivaled skill. He tells Nina that after using the skill, his stats have become halved, but because of the level reset, after the day passes, the stats also reset. On top of that, he has confirmed that rainbow skills don't reset, which is why he has 2 skills now, those being the unrivaled and level reset. After that, Ragnas tells her that now that he has explained everything, he needs to get started, and Nina is a bit confused at first, before he says that he has to make money by registering in the guild. They then get the forms to fill out for the guilds, and Ragnas tells her that she can use a fake name not to get found out. Nina asks Ragnas which name he picked, and he says that he registered with the name Rox, and that he took it from the author of a book he read when he was little. Nina says that she sees, and that she will go with the name Arve. Ragnas asks her if that doesn't mean little spirit in the ancient language, and says that she has a rather cute hobby, but Nina just screams at him to let her be. They then hand in those forms, and in turn, they get their guild plate. Ragnas says that they can put it anywhere as long as it can be seen, and Nina says that she will use it as a hair clip. They then go to the quest board and look for a good quest. However, Ragnas is quite disappointed as there are no good ones, as it's still early in the morning, and asks Nina if they should come back later. However, Nina tells him no, and that they will do this one. It's a rank C quest, and the mission is to defeat a large boar that is destroying the farmer's crops. Ragnas is a bit hesitant. However, Nina says that it's urgent, and that if they don't do anything, then the farmers will starve to death. Ragnas says that it's a high-rank quest, and that they should at least get 2 million as a reward, and not just 150,000. Nina argues, telling Ragnas to imagine what will happen if they don't help, and she says that even if Ragnas refuses, then she will go by herself. After that, we see that Ragnas decide to tag along, and they are currently in the forest where Ragnas is getting attacked by a wild rabbit. But just in time, Nina uses her fireball magic to kill it. Nina asks Ragnas, who is now on the ground, if he is alright, and he says that he is fine, but that he thought that he would die. After that, they encounter another wild rabbit, and Ragnas feels useless as he can't do anything. They then arrive at the village, and Nina says that it's really quiet for some reason. They walk further in and says that there is no one in sight before they see an old man who calls them adventurers. Nina tells him that they came here after seeing the quest and asks if they can meet the village chief. The old man says that he is the village chief, Kale, but is surprised that they actually showed up and tells them that he will tell them the details in his house. He explains how they got attacked by the big boar and tells them that they found a baby boar and tried to hunt it. But it was the child of the big boar, and it found out about this village while it was chasing them, and after that, it started attacking the fields and villagers. Ragnas just says that he was out for revenge, and Nina says that it makes her wonder if they are really doing the right thing. But Ragnas says that it doesn't matter, and that in this world, you either eat or get eaten, and there's no right or wrong. Nina gets a bit mad, but Ragnas gets right into it, and asks the chief when the big boar will attack again, and he says that it usually appears after the sun has set. Ragnas realizes that they then have to leave right away, and they then leave. The chief bows to them and tells them that he leaves it in their hands. As they have left the house, Nina tries to speak, but Ragnas interrupts her and says that this is a battle between the humans and the big boar, who have something they want to protect, and says that they are just fighting for what they think is right. And he asks Nina which side she is on. Nina says that she is on the village side, of course. Ragnas then tells her not to dwell on it, and that there's nothing more useless than someone who can't make a move when the time comes, and also tells her that he will take care of the big boar with one strike with his unrivaled skill. Nina then looks a bit mad before she says that he is right, even though he is just level 1. They then arrive, and Ragnas says that it looks like it's here, and Nina gets into focus and tells Ragnas to do their best. The boar appears, and Ragnas asks Nina to stop its movements, and Nina says that she is on it, and she uses her earthbind skill. Ragnas compliments her before he uses his unrivaled skill and tells the boar that this is the end before he gives it a nasty right hook and completely defeats it. Nina is amazed, and Ragnas just coldly says that it's nothing that his skill can't handle before asking if this will fit in the item box, and Nina says that it will fit, but just barely, and says that the storage depends on the magic power of the owner. Nina looks smug as she says that she feels like she has won against Ragnas for the first time, but Ragnas calls her a liar. He then shows Nina his status after using Unrivaled, and that his level has also increased, but that it will reset tomorrow. Ragnas then tells Nina to get it over with, and she agrees before some strange sounds catches both of their attention, and their faces look shocked as they see another larger boar appearing, and saying that it's mad at them for attacking their child. The boar roars towards them, and Ragnas tells Nina to watch out, and they then get some distance from the boar. Nina says that they can't retreat. Ragnas tells her that they just killed its family, and that it won't let them escape at all. Ragnas then thinks to himself that even though his level increased, he still have the debuffs after using Unrivaled. Nina then says that Ragnas is right, and that she will give it a try. Ragnas asks if Nina has a plan, and Nina tells him that she will use her skill, which is why Ragnas needs to buy Nina some time so that she can complete the chant, and he asks her how long she needs. Nina tells him that she needs about 25 seconds, and Ragnas says that he can do it. Nina then thinks that this is the strongest magic she knows, and that if this doesn't work, then it will be over for them. Ragnas then charges towards the boar while telling Nina that he is counting on her. Ragnas dashes and uses his sword to damage the boar's leg. However, while he wasn't looking, the boar took his face and pushed Ragnas away with it, which left him coughing up blood. Ragnas is now in the sky, and the boar is looking to go towards Nina. However, the goat Ragnas wouldn't let that happen, as he screams Earthbind, which makes it so that some trees grab hold of the boar and make him fall down to the ground. Ragnas is amazed how it hasn't gone 25 seconds yet, and thinks that he needs to lock down the boar for as long as he physically can, so he gets on top of it and stabs it right on its back, which makes the boar scream out of agony. Then suddenly Nina screams at Ragnas to get away, and he quickly dashes to Nina's side, and Nina then activates her skill activation magic boost. Ragnas is a bit shocked by this, before he then looks away. Anyway, Nina then continues as she follows up with her volcanic inferno, which causes fire to appear all around the boar, and Ragnas says that this is an advanced fire magic, before saying that with this much power, it should be over, and he looks over to Nina and compliments her, but he then sees that Nina isn't looking too well, and he screams out her name. Nina looks towards Ragnas and says his name before she falls down to the ground. Ragnas is able to come and protect her fall, and wonders if she ran out of mana and calls her reckless. He looks at her and thinks that certainly such a strong move requires a lot of mana, but something shocks him as he says that he doesn't feel any pain. Anyway, he says that he needs to think about that later, and that the quest should be complete now. However, he couldn't be more wrong, as the boar is still standing even though it looks to be extremely hurt. Ragnas just laughs as he sees this, and asks him how he is still alive before saying that this has to be a joke, and that there's no way that this is really a C-rank monster. Ragnas then thinks that since it's on the verge of death, this is his chance. He thinks that he doesn't have a decisive move, and he then pulls out his status board and sees that he now has 100 skill points. He then starts to look worried and thinks that this is do or die and that he has to make a gamble on it. He then looks towards Nina, who is on the ground, and he says that he is borrowing her skill crystal. Ragnas prays to the crystal for giving him something that he can use to fight. Suddenly, he sees that he has gotten the magic boost skill with his 100 skill points. He then thinks back to Felicia, who had gotten the magic boost before. However, he puts those thoughts away and says that he has no other choice, and he then tries to lure the boar over to him. Ragnas then stops and thinks that with this skill, he can increase the power of the magic he uses, and thinks that he will imitate Nina's magic from earlier. He then starts saying the same chant that Nina said, and as the boar is close enough, Ragnas uses his magic boost, and then also uses the spell Volcanic Inferno. After the smoke has disappeared, the boar looks to be totally burnt, and Ragnas wonders if he has finally gotten it. But just then, it gets back up, and Ragnas looks visibly annoyed as he wonders what's up with him. Both of them have a face-off, and Ragnas tries to fence it off with his sword. However, the boar dashes through and goes right against Ragnas's body. As he is getting beaten, he thinks that it's difficult to escape when Nina is still unconscious. He starts to think that if they run away, then the village will surely get destroyed. However, he knows that he can't keep attacking it with the advanced magic like just now, and even so, if he runs out of mana, then he will for sure be done for. But it's like something finally ticks in his brain, as he thinks that he can just use the same spell one more time on the boar. The boar, however, is quickly closing the distance between them. However, Ragnas has just finished his chant, and alongside his magic boost, he uses another Volcanic Inferno, and we can see that this time it completely destroys the boar, and the pure force from the spell even pushes Ragnas away. However, he then looks relieved as he can finally breathe out and says that it's over. He quickly gets up and goes towards Nina and says that he is glad that she is still safe, but he then starts to think and says that even though he used advanced fire magic, he has not run out of magic, and on top of that, he even took a direct hit from the boar. But then again, he didn't feel anything, and he starts to look worried as he wonders just what it is that is happening to his body. We then see that Nina has finally woken back up. She flies up right away, and is surprised to see both Ragnas and the fact that she is alive, and then asks what happened to the big boar. But Ragnas just tells her with a big smile that he defeated it, and she can almost not believe it. Suddenly, however, a little boar appears, and Ragnas asks if he is the child of the big boar. The little boar looks angry, and Ragnas thinks that it must want to take its revenge for its parents' death, saying that it must be rough to be the only one alive, and he takes its hands and says that he will put the little boar at ease. But just then, Nina stops him and tells him not to take others' lives without any need. Ragnas asks her what she means and says that the best thing to do is to nip the bud of revenge before it grows up. But Nina disagrees and says that if it's going to be an enemy, why not just make it their companion, and that they can replace its parents and raise it. Ragnas tries to tell her that it's useless and just to let it be, but Nina tells him that they won't know without trying, and Ragnas then gives in. However, as Nina goes forward and goes to the little boar, it suddenly jumps up and headbutts her face. Nina then catches it and tells the boar that they are no longer enemies, and that she won't ask the boar to forgive them, but to please at least let her say this. And she then apologizes, which makes the boar start to cry uncontrollably. Nina continues hugging it, while once again apologizing for making the boar go through all those bitter things. Then I don't know what happens, but the boar starts to look fired up, and Ragnas comes by saying that he is surprised that she actually tamed it, and Nina is just happy as she says that they are companions now. She thinks of a name for a bit before she then decides to name the boar Urine. Nina has stars around her as she looks super happy before she points Urine to Ragnas and asks him to get along. Ragnas just asks if he has to, but Nina then says his name with an angry voice, which makes him give in. However, as he goes to put out his arms for Urine, Urine suddenly headbutts his face. The text then says that after that, they reported to the village chief about the quest, and that after staying the night, they then returned back to the guild. Since they completed the C-rank quest recommended by the guild, both of their ranks increased, and they got the reward of 150,000 and a new plate. They then get to a pub, and they cheer. Nina then asks Ragnas how he managed to kill the big boar. Ragnas thinks that he hasn't told Nina about that yet, and says that when she collapsed, his skill points just reached 100, and at that time, he received the same skill as Nina has, the magic boost skill, saying that although it was inferior to Nina's power, thanks to imitating her advanced magic, he was able to win, but explaining that in the morning it disappeared from his skill section, and that it's probably because of his level reset. Nina just sips on her drink, and says that she sees. Ragnas then says that he is now certain that rainbow skills won't get reset, and with a bittersweet expression, he says that it also means that at the same time, if he doesn't get a rainbow skill, then he won't become stronger, thinking that now he needs to find out the conditions to get a rainbow skill, and getting to the bottom of it will be their next challenge. Ragnas thinks to himself that he was hoping that skills wouldn't get reset and calls it a shame before telling Nina that he has no choice but to work hard. After that, someone else comes by and apologizes for interrupting their talk, but tells them that the guildmaster would like to have a talk with the two of them and asks if they are fine to go now. We then get to the reception room, where Ragnas thinks that he can't calm down. However, then the very strange guildmaster comes in and apologizes to them for letting them wait and calls them kittens. She says that she is the guild master who oversees all the guilds in Asalef and tells them that she is called Kamar. Nina is right on board with all of this, while Ragnas looks at her surprised and wonders how she isn't shocked by any of this. Kamar then speaks to Ragnas, who immediately looks a bit weirded out, but Kamar says that he wanted to talk with them about the quest and says that originally it was a quest recommended for A ranks. Ragnas still looks at Kamar with a weirded expression, and Nina tells him that he is acting rude before asking Kamar if he can tell them more about it. She says that the quest was posted as recommended for A ranks, but since the reward was too low, no one accepted the quest, which is why it looks like the guild lowered the rank requirements to be very low, telling them that she was shocked because it doesn't usually happen, before saying that she is here to oversee the guilds, and tells them that she will make sure nothing like that happens again. She apologizes, but also thanks them, and tells them that the guild will also reward them, and she tells them that once they are done talking, they can collect it at the reception desk. She then sits back into her chair and says that they are truly amazing, and to think that an F rank and a G rank would complete an A rank quest before asking them who they really are. Kamar says that it's rude of her to ask something like this, but that she feels the need to ask. Ragnas then folds and says fine, and tells Kamar that Nina is the princess of Yuresh and that he is her slave. Nina right away grabs a hold of him and says that he is terrible. However, Ragnas tries to argue and says that they had no choice, and if they don't prove their innocence, they then won't be able to get out of here. Kamar, however, just says that she had a feeling that it was the case, and says that Nina resembles Oliva from the past. Nina looks back stunned and asks if Kamar knows her mother. Kamar laughs and says that she has known her for a very long time, and that she was really worried when she heard that the royal capital had fallen, and asks Nina how Oliva is doing. Nina doesn't know what to say, so Kamar lets her know that it's fine, and that she doesn't need to say anything, and that they should then move on to the next topic. She explains that they received a letter from the village chief, and that it seems like they used to call the big boar Erymanth. Nina is amazed that it's the sacred beast, the Erymanthian boar. Ragnas is just clueless and asks what a sacred beast is, and Kamar tells him that they're the ones who protect the land, and that they're like the god of the land, and that without them, the land will wither. Ragnas scratches his head and tells her that they didn't have a choice, and Kamar says that it's rare for sacred beasts to attack humans, saying that it's their fault for making this a quest without considering that fact, but saying that she just felt like explaining it to them, and that since the two of them defeated it, there isn't a sacred beast to protect that land anymore. Ragnas just looks lost, while Nina looks scared and wonders what they have done. After that, Nina pulls out urine, and Kamar says that it's so cute. Ragnas then asks if this shouldn't solve the issue, and says that if that's all, then they will excuse themselves, as there's something he has to investigate. Kamar asks him if that's it, and says that since she caused them so much trouble, she will try and help them as much as she can. Before they can leave, however, Nina whispers to Ragnas and asks if it's okay to tell Kamar, and that she might know something. Ragnas then asks Kamar if she has heard of the phenomenon when a skill crystal emits rainbow color and emits a skill. Kamar says that to say it bluntly, she doesn't know, however she tells them that she might know a person who knows about it, telling them that further east from the royal capital, there is a lake surrounded by hills, and in the middle of the lake, there's a big mansion, and says that the person lives there, explaining that it's a monster who has lived for over 400 years and is called the evil-eyed vampire. Kamar says that there is rumors that they can see into anything in the world, and that there's nothing they don't know. However, she tells them that she isn't sure if they will want to help, but Kamar still gives them the map. Ragnas asks Kamar if there is a chance that they might get killed, and Kamar says that maybe in the worst case, but even then Ragnas says that he needs to go because he needs even a tiny bit of info. However, he thinks that there's no need for Nina to come and risk her life, and he tries to tell her that, however, even before he can finish his sentence, Nina tells him that she is his master and that he can't leave her behind, and she then says that they will go and greet the evil-eyed vampire together. We then fast forward to them arriving at the mansion. However, they are confused about how they will cross the lake. Ragnar says that he doesn't want to use his skill to cross, but then Nina says that there are some black things coming from the building and that they are heading towards them. They quickly realize that it's bats, and the bats land in front of them and then create a bridge for them to walk on. However, Ragnar can't help but think that it might be a trap. Nina then puts her foot down and apologizes to the bat for stepping on them, before asking Ragnar if she can tell him something. Ragnar just tells her that if it's something other than for them to stop, then he will listen. However, Ragnar saw through her, as that was what she was going to say, and she then tells him that it's nothing, as he guessed it. They then arrive, and they open some sort of door where they are blinded by an intense beam of light, and they hear a voice welcoming them to her mansion. We then see the vampire, who smiles and says that she is happy to have them here. Ragnas and Nina both look a bit shocked, but the vampire says that it seems like they can't make a sound after seeing her sinister appearance, and is about to say her name when Ragnas suddenly says time out and apologizes, as it seems like they have gotten to the wrong place and are about to head back. However, the vampire quickly floats towards them and says that they are in the right place, and she introduces herself as Scarlet Bloodray, but says that people call her the evil-eyed vampire. Scarlet asks if they weren't here to ask about the rainbow-colored skills and says that she will very well tell them. Scarlet looks closely at Ragnas and says that he has already acquired 4 rainbow-colored skills, but Ragnas is confused as he says that he only has 2. However, Scarlet says that since he didn't acquire it officially, it's not shown in the status panel, and says that she is sure that he can feel its effect. Ragnas still isn't getting any of this and asks her to explain in more detail. Scarlet tells him that she means both his level reset and his unrivaled skill, which has now been changed to invincible, so I will call it that from now on. Anyway, they were officially obtained using the skill crystal from Elizabeth and Yuresh as a medium, explaining that you can obtain skills by either using the crystal as a medium or coexisting with the crystal, and that, in other words, staying close to the crystal, telling Ragnas that the skills he has obtained like that are not official, which is why they are not shown in the status panel, also telling them that it's only 1 skill per crystal, and that it's the relation between the skill crystal and rainbow-colored skills. Both Nina and Ragnas looks clueless, so Scarlet tells them that she will give them a hint, and she tells them that the rainbow-colored skill he received from a skill crystal is fixed, and that he obtained the other 2 skills from the skill crystal of Diane and Rojamel. Nina gets in total awe as she hears that, and asks if they weren't destroyed by Lisbeth, but Scarlet says that she is right. Ragnas then thinks that his father was the commander on the war with those countries, with the orders from the king, and that those skill crystals were possessed by his father. Scarlet just laughs mockingly and asks if they believe her now, and Ragnas says that he does before he asks her if she will tell him about his hidden skills. She thinks before saying that the skills are quick growth and super healing, explaining that just as the name says, quick growth helps him level up quickly, which is why he had already surpassed the average levels of the Royal Knights when he was just a kid. Ragnas then thinks about the super healing and says that it recovers his stamina and magic and removes other abnormal conditions when he levels up, which makes sense, as when he was treated as a slave and when he was fighting against the giant boar, he noticed that his wounds had healed. Ragnas then asks her what demerits these skills have, but Scarlet says that there isn't one, but that he is getting things that are too strong and tells him to be cautious. She then says that, leaving that aside, she also has one of the skill crystals. Scarlet tells them that this is a skill crystal from a once prosperous country, Inzine, and that she will give it to Ragnas. Ragnas, however, tells her that he doesn't have enough skill points, so he doesn't know when he will get to use it. However, Scarlet scratches her head and says that he is filled with weird thoughts and says that it's not required for a rainbow-colored skill, and that the reason his skill points were consumed, she is about to say why. However, she stops herself and tells him not to worry about it. Ragnas just then takes her skill crystal and uses it. He thinks that he gets a feeling that his skill points have been consumed, but Scarlet then tells him to check his status, and there he sees that he has gotten a skill called Random Skill, saying that once per day, a random skill can be learned without consuming skill points, continuing by saying that the acquired skills will disappear the moment the date changes. The lower the level of the user, the skills learned become stronger, and the higher the level, the weaker the skill learned. Scarlet asks what he thinks and says that this goes well with his level reset. Ragnas agrees, and Nina then adds in by saying that listening to it, it feels like the rainbow-colored skills were configured for the level reset. Scarlet says, of course, and tells them that it's a skill that becomes the strongest after obtaining all the rainbow-colored skills, and that it becomes stronger with the synergy with each rainbow-colored skill. Ragnas asks her what she means, and asks if there's no point if he doesn't obtain all the rainbow-colored skills. Scarlet says that she won't say it like that, but that it might eventually become the case. Suddenly, a bat comes flying in, and Scarlet says that she will listen to her familiar and tells them to give her a moment. However, as Ragnas and Nina are about to talk, Scarlet's own conversation quickly catches their attention, and we then see that on the west side, located near the forest, there are a ton of knights going around and calling the town ignorant for trying to hide something from Lisbeth. We see one knight holding a sword towards a civilian before someone comes before him and tells him not to harm those who surrender, and that for now, they should just gather information. We then see Forlock, who looks determined as he says that their top priority is capturing Nina Yuresh. We then get back to Ragnus and Nina, where Ragnus is completely blown away by this, and asks if that isn't the town close to the forest where Ragnus and Nina first met. Nina, however, is confused, as the West Side shouldn't be at war. But Scarlet explains that the ones who started it are the Lizepth 7 Stars, and that it's an army led by Forlock Alakrit. She starts to look serious as she says that the West Side, or rather the Aswalef Kingdom, wasn't at war with any country, and that the Royal Knights have been dispatched to recapture the West Side, saying that if this goes on, then a full-scale war will break out. Ragnus is silent. Meanwhile, Nina starts to shiver in fear. Ragnus then asks Scarlet behind the reason Lisbeth is invading Aswalef, and Scarlet says that they probably already know it, but that their purpose is capturing Nina Yuresh, and that it seems like they're saying that they will stop all this if Aswalef hands her over. Ragnus then asks Scarlet to let Nina hide here, and Scarlet says that she doesn't mind. However, just then Nina starts to leave, and Ragnus asks her where she is going. Nina looks back and tells him that a war might break out because of her, and that there's no way that she will keep hiding. Ragnus asks her what it is that she is saying, and asks her if she even has some sort of plan. Nina just asks him if he isn't coming with her, and that if it's the two of them, then they can surely fix it. Ragnus then grabs a hold of her and tells her that if she already has a good plan to help the West Side, then he would be happy to help. However, they can't do it with just the two of them, and he calls her reckless, telling her that he understands her thoughts, but that she is being impulsive right now. Nina looks sad. Meanwhile, Ragnus thinks that his rainbow-colored skills aren't omnipotent either, and that he might not be able to protect Nina. Nina then speaks up and says that she knows that she is being impulsive, but that people are suffering because of her, and that she must go. Ragnus tells her to please give up, and he tells her that if she wants to go so badly, then she has to go by herself, and that Ragnus won't follow along. It then gets quiet before Nina asks if that's true, and says that she will go by herself then. Ragnus asks her if she doesn't understand how dangerous it will be. However, she tells him that she already knows, as we can see her looking super scared. But even then, she tells him that she has prepared her resolve, and that she has the pride of a royal. Ragnus doesn't know what to say, and Scarlet then speaks up and says that she will give them one piece of advice. She tells them that she understands their feelings, but that if they focus too much on it, then it will blind them to their surroundings, and she tells them to not rush, but instead stay calm and find great results that way. Nina smiles and says that she appreciates the advice, but that she will be going, saying that even if Ragnus doesn't come along with her. She then looks directly towards Ragnus and apologizes for causing him trouble all this time, and she thanks him for staying by her side before she tells him farewell, and she then disappears, and Ragnus looks completely lost for words. Ragnus is still just in pure awe that Nina left him, but then Scarlet speaks up and starts to laugh while saying that Ragnus got left behind by his own master. Ragnus looks really annoyed and tells her to please not make it worse, but then Scarlet suddenly tells him that he should also go to the West Side and save Nina, which shocks him. Ragnus asks if she means to simply not bring her back, but instead save her. Scarlet tells him that she understands his concerns, but tells him that if he doesn't go, then he will get in trouble, and he asks what she means by that. Scarlet starts walking as she says that what he does from now on will determine the fate of this world, and tells Ragnus that Nina is essential. Ragnus is a bit annoyed and asks if she can't tell him in more detail, but she says that she can't, and that the future will change if she does, explaining that Ragnus will take the right actions if he doesn't know the truth, so even if he knows everything, then he won't be able to take the right actions. Ragnus finally understands and says that the reason Scarlet let Nina go was also because there was a reason they had to go to the West Side, and he says that he will do as Scarlet says. Scarlet smirks and tells him to just make sure to think properly about what she just said, and then Ragnus begins his search. The text says that a few days later, Ragnus has arrived at the Aswalef Kingdom, where he quickly began to gather various information. He picks up a paper and sees a picture of Forlock, and says that he is the captain of the Lizepth army, and also possesses the title of Sword Saint. Thinking that he is skilled in using a great sword, Ragnus then thinks that Forlock looks to be around his age. After that, we get explained that right now, Forlock is invading the West Side with one platoon, and that their purpose is to capture Nina dead or alive, saying that if their wishes are not met, they plan to attack the royal capital too, and that the kingdom of Aswalef is already aware of it. However, at the guild, Ragnus was able to overhear that the army and the guild would work together to prevent the war. He then scratches his head and thinks with that said, he searched for Nina, but that there were no signs of her, and that he doesn't think she's offered herself up, since he hasn't heard about Forlock retreating. He thinks that since she has a tendency to jump without thinking, maybe she is here already. However, most importantly, he just hopes that she is okay and that she won't do anything reckless. Ragnar then looks around at the buildings and says that there isn't much damage to the buildings and that there is almost like they've given up on this town, thinking that he wants a little bit of information right now and to get that he will listen to others chatting with the listening skill he obtained from the random skill. He then spots some soldiers and he hears them saying that their captain is finally starting to invade Yogan, and the other asks if he is for real and wonders if they can really do that with only one platoon. Ragnar then overhears them saying that Forlock hates to kill people and that even when they were taking over this town, he told them not to kill, which is why it took way longer than expected. Ragnar then begins to walk away and thinks that this skill is pretty convenient. However, he suddenly gets shocked as he hears someone behind him saying that it's finally here. He looks back, but sees no one but the mysterious figure, who then tells him to look down, and it's none other than Urin, who asks Ragnar how much longer he was planning on making him wait. Ragnar is just caught off guard that he can even hear Urin's voice. Urin then tells Ragnar that Nina ordered him to guide Ragnar if he found him and asks him to follow him. Urin then leads Ragnar to the cute forest where they first met, and they suddenly arrive at a tree with an opening. They go inside and see some sort of big door, and Ragnar opens it and sees Nina being ecstatic over seeing him. Ragnar is happy and sees that she is still alive after all. Nina is surprised how he found her, even though she sent Urin. But Ragnar tells her that today he got the listening skill from his random skill, and with that he can even hear the thoughts of Urin. Nina looks happy, weirdly enough, and says that it's why he was able to read her thoughts, but says that it's a shame that it only lasts for one day. Ragnar says that he would have much rather had some sort of combat skills. He then says that since she knew that he would come, she must have a plan, right? Nina is a bit confused, but then Ragnar says that Scarlet is here with them and tells her to come out. It turns out that she had hidden as a bat in Nina's hair. Scarlet just mocks him and says that it took him a while to get here. Nina then says that she was skeptical, but that she didn't think that he would come even after she said all that, and she then thanks him again. Scarlet just laughs and tells her that Ragnar would rush to Nina, who he loves, but Ragnar just tells Scarlet to calm down. After that, Ragnar asks Nina what she is doing in a place like this, and says that he thought for sure that she would be on a suicide mission. Nina says that it was the plan at the start, but that she remembered Scarlet's words, which is why she cooled down and thought about it, but still she can't think of anything other than sacrificing herself. We then just go over to Scarlet again, who says that it was good that she kept an eye on Ragnar too, as she reveals that she had placed a bat on him too, which is how Urin was able to find him. Scarlet then tells them that it's not the time to be talking about that stuff, and says that she knows that Ragnar investigated here and there. Ragnar says that he did, and tells them what he found out. He says that according to the soldiers, Forlock hates killing, and that's why the west side is mostly unscratched. But it seems that they're planning to invade Yogan now. Ragnar then says that the soldiers aren't really that fond of him, and that in fact, it seems like there are many soldiers who are ready to betray him if a clash happens with the Aswalef coalition, saying that he thinks that it would be safer to just wait and see until the Aswalef coalition defeats them. Nina is quiet. Meanwhile, Ragnar thinks that if they do that, then both sides will suffer some damages, and Nina will be the cause of all this, thinking that she must be despairing that her existence has sparked a fire. Nina then gets an awkward smile and says that it can't be helped. Ragnar is just amazed that she agreed, and she then says that doing that will work and that she knows that he is saying that to keep her in mind. Ragnar says that it would be the case normally, and Nina asks him what he means, and he tells her that Scarlet told him to save her, but she didn't tell him in detail, so his guess is that Nina's life isn't in any danger. After that, Nina calls out for Ragnar, and she looks embarrassed as she says that she knows that he won't agree, but asks if she can tell him what she wants to do right now. Ragnar says sure, and she says that she wants to save Forlock, which leaves Ragnar speechless. Ragnar then asks her if she's for real, and she apologizes. Ragnar looks lost, and asks if she can tell him her reason for this. Nina says that from what she has heard, he doesn't seem to be a bad person, and even the west side isn't taking much damage because of him, telling Ragnar that it's probably because he stopped his soldier from killing, and she doesn't like having such a person die because of his allies betraying him. Ragnar calls it a simple reason, and Nina says that she agrees. Ragnar then thinks about helping an enemy, but thinks that something's bothering him. As to accomplish this, it's almost impossible for Nina alone. He thinks that there's a chance with his invincible and random skill, which is why he understands the reason for why he should be here. Ragnar is lost in mind, so Nina calls out for him, and Ragnar then says that he will do as she says this time, which shocks her. Ragnar says that first they need to meet up with Forlock and that they have to do it tonight, saying that the invasion on Yogan has been decided to be tomorrow at noon and that there will be a party tonight to boost their morale. So there will be light security in the rooms, explaining that if they want to intrude in his room, then the time when everyone has fallen asleep would be a good time, and they then agree on it. Ragnar then looks towards Urin and says that they should have a talk now that he's got his listening skill. They walk out, and Urin asks him what he wants to talk about. He says he wants to ask Urin why he decided to follow Nina, saying that they killed his parents, and asks if they aren't like enemies to him and why he would work together with them. Urin says that it's to avenge his mom and dad. Ragnar says that it's as expected and asks if he is looking for an opportunity to take revenge on Ragnar. But Urin says that it's not it, saying that, yeah, they killed his mom and dad, and he detests it. However, the reason his mom and dad attacked the village was that someone was manipulating them. Ragnar asks what he means, and Urin asks Ragnar to think about it, saying that even if the villagers attacked him and his parents got mad, he wasn't killed, so normally they wouldn't be attacking the village persistently. And even if they get really mad, they would only attack once or twice, saying that it's just that one day they started attacking the village like they were possessed, and no matter how many times he tried to stop them, they wouldn't listen. He thought that at this rate, a strong human will come someday and kill them. Ragnar thinks to himself that this is why it came to a conclusion that they were manipulated, and thinks that he feels bad for Urin. He then asks him if he is working together with them to take revenge on the manipulator, and he says that he is. However, Ragnar has one more question, and he asks Urin why he accepted Nina as his master. Urin thinks for a bit, but says that he doesn't know himself, saying that it felt warm when she hugged him, and that he felt really safe with her, and that he could trust her, which is why he forgave them. Ragnar smiles and says that he did a good decision, as Nina won't treat him badly. They are then just about to head in when Urin tells him to wait, and that there is something he needs to tell him. However, just when he is about to tell Ragnar, his skill got resetted, which means that he can't hear Urin anymore, and Urin then bashes against Ragnar mad. After that, they walk back in, and Nina tells him that she is done preparing and that she is ready to move whenever, and Ragnar then smiles and tells them to begin the Forlock support operation. We then get to inside the west side, where Ragnar says that the security is quite loose in the entrance, and Nina asks him how they will infiltrate them. They see one guard, and Ragnar says that they need to knock him out in one strike. They wonder who should do it, but that's when Urin appears and looks hyped to do it. Urin then jumps down to the guard, and in an instant, she jumps towards his face and totally knocks him down. Urin falls to the ground as well, and they ask him if he is okay, but he just looks fired up to the max and compliments him. And with the soldier knocked out, they start to walk. They arrive at a mansion where Ragnar says that Forlock should be at. Nina is amazed that there isn't even a single guard here, and Ragnar says that everyone should be busy at the party. They then get to the door, and Ragnar asks Nina if there's a possibility that the lock is a magic lock, and asks if Nina can use her magic search ability on it, and Nina does just that, but says that it seems to be a normal lock. However, they think that it sounds too easy, and wonder if this might be a trap. Ragnar says that there is a chance that it is, but that it doesn't feel like it. And they then unlock the door, they walk inside, and once again there is no guards nearby, and Ragnar just wonders if he really is the captain. They then walk up the stairs, and Ragnar says that his room is the furthest one on the second floor, and they walk to his door without seeing a single guard or anything in their way. They then get into the room flawlessly, and sees that he is sleeping peacefully. Ragnar is a bit amazed at his red hair, but Nina explains that it shows that he has royal blood of Elizabeth. Ragnar then thinks that as a child, he was told that everyone who carries the royal blood of Lisbeth has red hair, and that it might actually be the case, considering he's the captain of the 7 stars, but that he doesn't know why he's using Alacrete as his family name and not Elizabeth. Suddenly Forlock wakes up and asks who is there. He then picks up a knife and asks them to show themselves.